Here is a complete guide to the Dawntrail Relic weapon, or the Phantom Relic weapon, whatever you prefer to call them. I'm going to cover over every single step and the fastest method, and as always, the timestamps will be down below. Now, before you start, I want it to be known that this entire relic takes around 70 hours if that's the goal that you're trying to complete, and you're going to need around 1.3 million gil along with 600 bicolor gemstones and the ability to craft some higher level crafts at level 100. Alternatively, if you don't want to craft, you can have additional gil to purchase the items that you will need for each of the steps. Now with that out of the way, let's get started. Now, after you have unlocked your relic in the Phantom Village, we can move on to the first step, the Atma. You will be required to collect 6 different demi-Atma, each one being tied to a specific zone in Dawntrail, as well as areas in the southern horn of Occult Crescent. We'll need to gather 3 of each of these demi-materia, making for 18 in total. The demi-Atma will drop from critical engagements in the southern horn with a 1 in 5 drop rates, or fates in specific zones and fates in the Occult Crescent with a 1 in 20 drop rate. This map here is a great resource as it shows you the zone that each different type of demi materia can drop from, as well as the areas inside of the southern horn. The fastest method for your demi-Atma farm will be Occult Crescent and participating in critical engagement. My suggestion to you is to farm critical engagements and fates inside the southern horn until you're nearly completed with all 6 different types of demi-Atma. Now, some are more stubborn than others, so as you near completion, this is when I suggest that you pick the specific zone that you need to farm the remainder of your demi-Atma to complete all 18. This is a good time because I'm going to note it now. You're going to need 600 gemstones for a later step, so I would encourage you to also farm fates if you want to avoid paying gil on the market board. Now, once you are completed with your demi-Atma, we get to move on to a part of the step that you will become all too familiar with, as we are tome farming. Speaking of tome farming, for every single step of the relic, you will be required to farm 1,500 tomestones of memetics if you are playing this in Dawntrail, and 1,500 poetics if you are doing this in the future. After you've collected your tomestones, you can then return to the Phantom Village and pick up your 3 Arcanite, which will be needed to turn in to complete every single one of the relics, depending on how many you want to complete. Once you turn that in, you have completed this step. If you're looking for an efficient way to farm tomes, the most efficient way, whether it be memetics or regular tomestones, will be hunt trains. However, do whatever your heart desires, as long as it gives you tomes. Now moving on to step 2, filling the array. This will require us to purchase and craft a few materials. The first thing we can do is purchase the glue, which can be found in Troll for 300k gil at the coordinates down below. Then we need to purchase a Senderite, which can either be found in Yoctel for 600 gemstones if you kept those, or you can purchase this off of the market board. Now the next 3 items, the synthetic dark matter alpha, beta, and gamma, can either be crafted or purchased off of the market board. If you don't have crafters at level 100 or master recipe 12s, you will have to purchase this item off of the market board. However, if you can craft these, those are the prerequisites. Once you gather everything, we go on to the next part, which is collecting 10,000 Aether in 4 different categories. They go as followed. Wind is high-level dungeons, water is alliance raids, fire is tied to trials, and earth is normal raids. Now, getting 40,000 Aether in total may sound like a lot. However, we get a daily bonus, which will do a lot of the heavy lifting. The daily bonus goes as follows. Alliance Raid gives a bonus of 101, Dungeons 376, and Trials and Normal Raid give 614 as a daily bonus. Using the daily bonus, as this is the most efficient way, will take you about 13 to 14 days to complete all of those if you do each one of these activities once a day. You can farm these repeatedly if you want. You will miss out on the daily bonus, so you will lose on the most efficient method. However, if you want to do this faster than 13 days, you certainly can. I will say there's one exception to this rule as alliance raids, as the bonus is only 100 points. It is perfectly reasonable to farm these at your leisure. Now, once you've completed all of the Aether, you go on to the next step, which is just more tomes. Go back to the Phantom Village, and after you get 1500 tomes, you will be able to complete a relic. After you completed that step, we get to go on to step 3, which is Crystal Paste, which will once again ask us to get a few more items and do some crafting. This time we are required to get some clay, which once again can be purchased at Relic for 500k gil. The next 3 items, the Aspect Aether Conductor, the Aspect Aether Agglomerate, and the Aspect Aether Crystal, can once again be crafted or purchased off of the market board. Once you've completed all of that, we get to move on to Crystal Paste. While the step is broken up into a few parts, you're required to get 1200 Crystal Paste in total. Now, how Crystal Paste works is you will get a fixed amount based on the activity you complete. This graph here will show you all of the different activities and the crystal paste that you get. So for example, the daily roulette of leveling will give you 20 crystal paste, expert roulette will give you 15, pilgrims traverse floors 1 through 10 will give you 10, while floors 91 through 100 will give you 26 crystal paste. As of right now, the fastest method is leveling roulette, as long as you meet a few conditions. We can meet these conditions by removing all of our gear or making sure someone in our party removes all of their gear while equipping a low level weapon. What this does is then, as we queue into leveling roulette, will give us some of the earlier on MSQ dungeons, and if we're very lucky, the 4-player Ifrit trials. The reason we want these is they have dramatically reduced completion times. This is what makes this farm so efficient. As you queue in, you have no gear on, thinks you're a lower level player. Then when you go into the activity, you can just switch on to the regular gear, complete the activity, and then rinse and repeat until you complete all of your crystal paste. If you need help finding a low level weapon, PvP vendors have level 1 weapons, or if not, most of the starting cities have low level weapons that you can buy from vendors. However, if you want to do the raid series because you haven't done that, or deep dungeon, absolutely double dip. And just in terms of pure efficiency, as of right now, the leveling roulette is the most efficient way. One thing I want to note for the future, as we get better gear and as we go into future expansions, the most efficient way may become unsyncing the raid series, whether it be normal or savage, if the kill times get low enough. You're probably looking at an expansion or 2 away from Dawntrail, because the kill times will need to be around 2 to 3 minutes in order for it to be more efficient than leveling roulette. But just keep that in note as if you're watching this in the future. And after you got your 1200 paste, you guessed it, we're back to more tome farming, baby! Now, onto the final part of the Phantom Relic. Once again, we are starting out with some crafting. You can go back to our familiar spot at Relic and purchase a whetstone for 500k gil. Then we're going to have to craft an ingot, a piece of twine, and some polish. Once again, master level craft. If not, you can purchase these items off of the market board. After we've gathered these items, we're back off to Geralt, where we will be asked to get 100 of 3 different types of Phantom Dispellers, Alpha, Beta, and Gamma. These come from a few sources, such as the North Horn of Occult Crescent, and for Alpha, you can do high-level dungeons, for Beta, you can do trials, and for Gamma, you can do normal raids. From Occult Crescent, they drop from critical engagements at an amount of 10, and from fates with an amount of 5. It appears to be somewhat random, and if you don't want to deal with that, you can do high-level dungeons for Alpha at 13 per completion, and for Beta you can do trials for 5, and for Gamma you can do normal raids for 5 Dispellers for each completion. My suggestion to you is to do the Occult Crescent until you nearly have 100 of each of those, and then spot farm in your dungeons, trials, and normal raids as needed. In my experience, the North Horn farming was significantly faster than the dungeon farming. However, if you have a pre-made party, it could be faster in the trials and in the dungeons. Now, after you completed all of the Phantom Dispellers, you go back out to Geralt, and this is where we get to the Fate farming step of this. you'll be asked to get 3 Arcanite, and then after you've purchased these, you go back to Garrett where he will give you the 790 weapon. For those of you looking to do additional relics, this is the fate farming portion of this relic. And after you've completed this, we get to move on to the final step of the relic. Now this part is pretty straightforward as it just has you do every single activity in Dawntrail. I am talking fates in every single zone, certain mobs in every single zone, every single dungeon, every single trial, every single normal raid, and every single alliance raid. I do not have any suggestions on how to make this faster. However, I do have the mob locations on the map now that are on the screen now, and link in bio if you're looking for more specific those on the wiki, but you will be required to kill 4 mobs in every single location while doing 5 fates. My suggestion to you is just put up a PF and kill the mobs on the way of farming all of your fates, but you do you whatever you want. The locations of the mobs are on the screen. Now for everything else, I would just suggest put up a party finder and be like, hey, look, I'm relic grinding and we're going through all of the dungeons, or make your own pre-made party, because really the only fastest way to speed this part up is just avoiding the matchmaking. So party finder, you may sit there for a little while, but if you get a group that's willing to just go through all 12 of the normal raids in one sitting, you can significantly speed up the process, and that is what I did. Form your own pre-made. However, since you are doing every single activity in Dawntrail, take it at your leisure, do it whatever. This is the final step of the relic. Once you have done this, you are home free and you are completed. For those of you who are looking to do additional relics, after you get your 3 Arcanite, you just go back to Geralt. You then purchase the 790 version of the relic, and then you talk to him again and go through all of the cutscenes again. This is the section where you get to pick your stats. Kind of feels like you have to refarm everything. You don't. I don't know why they chose to do this. Probably because then you have a screen to pick the stats and have some separation. However, your anxiety could be put to rest, or maybe it was just mine. But yeah, that's how you get additional relics if you're looking to get additional relics on this step. But yeah, that is everything I have for this guide. I hope you found it helpful. I hope this helped you complete your Dawntrail relics. And as always, I hope you have a great day.